It's time for another edition of Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by FCCB, First Citizens Community Bank, the local branches in Blossburg, Mansfield, and Wellsboro. Proud supporters of Saturday with Seniors here on KC101. And this one, a special edition, actually done from Massachusetts with my mom. Here for Easter visiting, and figured why not, while we're here, have you on as a guest, because I want to hear your story, Mom. How are you?
I'm good.
This is the first time I've had somebody on that I know this well, so I've known you my whole life.
Yes, you have. Your whole life.
But I know some about your life before me, but you had a big chunk of your life before me. So let me go way back. Tell me about my grandparents, your mom and dad. What did they do for work, and what do you remember about them and their names?
My mom's name was Catherine, and my father's name was Carl. Most mothers were stay-at-home moms, and that's what she did. And my father worked at a place called La Pointe's, which was a machine company.
And from what I gather and have heard, money was very tight in your family when you were growing up.
Yes, it was. It was just my dad's salary that got us through, but it was great.
So if there wasn't enough to go around, I remember you telling me stories about your dad would go without shoes so the kids could have them.
Yes, my dad did do that. I remember I wanted a new pair of shoes, and I didn't know it at the time, but my dad did not buy the pair he wanted for himself. He went without it. I guess that's love.
And there was a lot of love in your family when you were growing up. Brothers, sisters, you had how many in the house? 5 brothers. Hold on, help me out.
There were 5 of us all together. I am the oldest. I have a sister and 3 brothers.
Now, where you grew up in Marlboro, it was called French Hill back in this area. We're Marlboro, Massachusetts. We're about 25 miles out of Boston. It was called French Hill for what reason?
A lot of French people lived in that area. My grandmother was French, and she lived in the same house with us. And she could only speak French. I sort of taught her some English, and she taught me my French. I wouldn't have known French if it wasn't for her.
Now, when you went to school, part of your school day was in French as well.
Yes, it was. I had my subjects half a day in English and then half a day in French. A little difficult, but I worked it out. Guess that's how I learned my French too, my English.
Was there that many French-speaking people in this area where I grew up outside of Boston that you could use French regularly?
Yes, well, that's why the area where we lived was called French Hill. And there were stores there that you could go to shopping. My grandmother would like to do that. She'd go to a grocery store and they all spoke French. They understood what she wanted. And next door was a cobbler who repaired shoes, and he also spoke French. And it was just very nice for her. But once in a while, she wanted to go to the regular grocery store with me. I'd go along and translate for her in English, of course.
How were she treated at being French nationality? Was the French sort of picked on in Marlboro because they didn't speak English, or was there not really any issue? How'd she feel about that?
It was fine. There were all sorts of nationalities. Italians all lived like near their church, the Italian church, and French Hill was where the French church was, and we would walk to church, and it was fine. You know, people got along in those days.
Church was really important to your mom, to my grandma there, and St. Mary's Church, was that the same church you went to when you were a little kid?
Yes, St. Mary's was the church that we went to, of course, every Sunday. My mother was such a devout Catholic that she went to church every day of her life. My father, of course, went along with her, and she was just a wonderful Catholic, a wonderful person. She did a lot of volunteer work in nursing homes, visiting some people that belonged to the church before her, and talking with them. I'm sure they enjoyed it. She did too.
I remember now you said that she was a stay-at-home mom and raising 5 kids would certainly be a full-time job, but I also remember working at the local grocery store, the Big D grocery store, being a checkout lady, your mom.
Yes, she did work at the Big D grocery store as a cashier, but that was when I was in high school, and it was all right, to go ahead and go to work. She used to bring home the leftovers sometimes, the burgers and fries that were left over, and we'd enjoy eating them.
Well, that's neat. And I remember they had an annual picnic each year for everyone who worked at the grocery store, and you're allowed to bring your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids to the event. This was the Big E Expo, the huge outdoor agricultural expo, and I remember they could not believe when they asked her how many tickets she needed.
Yeah, she said she needed 30. And they go, oh my gosh, you must have a lot of children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Yeah, I do. And we all got tickets and we all went.
Wow. So going back to when you were a little kid, do you remember your first day of school?
Yes, I do. I went to kindergarten, and the school was St. Mary's, right beside the church. And I do remember the first day going to kindergarten. My mother walked me there and said goodbye. I went in. I had to wear a uniform then, too, and had to make sure everything was neat. And in I went.
And what happened if somebody got in trouble? And I'm going to have to ask if you ever got in trouble, but what did the nuns do if you got, it was nuns, right?
Yes, it was nuns. No, I never got in trouble.
Really?
Really? I saw other people get in trouble.
Never got caught.
No, I never. I was good, Kevin.
So what happened to the kids that did get in trouble?
Well, the nuns did have a ruler, and if they were really bad, they put their hand out and got slapped with the ruler. Guess they learned that way.
Kids were more disciplined then, right?
They were. And kids were quiet in class and listened to what the teacher was saying. They had a lot of respect for the teacher, too.
So what do you think about what you see today when you go out to dinner or you see a couple on a date and they're both looking at their phones instead of each other?
I feel like there's something missing, and especially if there's two kids with them, and each of the kids are looking at their phones as well, and the mother and father, and I say, gee, they're just talking to someone else instead of their family. We didn't have that then, and so we sat down as a family, ate dinner, and spoke to each other. It was just nice, lots of nice memories, how everything went every day.
Yeah, things certainly have changed. And you remember, how old were you when you got your first TV?
Oh, I don't know, but of course it was a black and white TV in a beautiful wooden cabinet, and the screen was round on it. And weren't many channels that we could watch, but we did, and it was fine with us.
What were some of the early shows that you watched? Howdy Doody, I bet.
Yeah, Howdy Doody.
Lone Ranger, do you remember on TV? Or the early soap operas? Or
I don't think there were soap operas then. I watched soap operas after you were born, Kevin. I'd be sitting down feeding you, and then I would watch some soap operas every day while feeding you.
So let's go on to me.
Okay.
What's your earliest memory of me?
When you were born, I was just so happy. I held you in my arms, and I couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle. And here it is, my son. Oh, and you grew up so nice, too.
You did a good job raising me. Now, I fell off the tracks a few times, but you were patient with me.
Yes, I was. And you did turn out very good, Kevin. We all learn from our mistakes.
Yes, we certainly do, or hopefully we all do. I have done that. We're going to be right back in just a minute. It's Saturday with Seniors here. And my mom, the guest today here. Mom, I haven't asked you, actually. Tell everybody how old you are.
75.
75. So you just made the cutoff. We usually ask for 75 and older, so you just made it in the door. We'll be right back. All brought to you by FCCB, First Citizens Community Bank, with local branches in Mansfield, Wellsboro, and Blossburg. And we're back. It's Saturday with Seniors, another edition brought to you by FCCB, First Citizens Community Bank, with local branches in Mansfield, Wellsboro, and Blossburg. And I got my mom here today on Saturday with Seniors. She's 75 years old, and she grew up outside of Boston, so not really Tioga County, but kind of neat here. I'm enjoying it, at least, about what life was like here as she was growing up. So, Mom, you got to tell me the story here. Now, you were Miss Marlboro, the town that I grew up in, back in what year?
1964.
So how did this happen? Was it a pageant that someone suggested you enter? Did you decide to enter? Did everybody enter this pageant?
I did not enter myself. A neighbor of mine entered me into it. And it was fun.
So that you didn't know you were entered? They filled out the form for you on your behalf?
Yes. Actually, it was Arlene Felt who had filled out the form, and she had sent it in, and then they contacted me and said that she had recommended that I go into the pageant. And it was good. I mean, there were 15 other girls in it as well.
All right, so you entered the Miss Marlboro pageant, and what happened?
I won.
So because you won that, was that what allowed you to go on to states?
Yes, it did. And then I was first runner-up in Miss Massachusetts, and that was an honor.
And what year was that?
That was that same year, 64, or either the beginning of 65, because it was a year that I was Miss Marlboro.
So you were that close to being Miss Massachusetts and going on to Miss USA, which was a huge, huge deal back then.
Oh, yeah, it was.
So were people looking up to you in town as sort of a local hero or celebrity?
Yes.
I know you're modest, but go ahead.
People that knew me did, yes. And I mean, I remember I was in the Labor Day parade, sitting in the back of a convertible and waving to the people with my crown on my head. And
we actually have a picture of that that we found online that we're showing right here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing that.
Yeah, you're right. We do.
So let's talk about your first job. Where was your first job, Mom?
My first job was at a department store, and I worked at the layaway desk. Then people put away layaways.
Was that Grants that you worked at?
Yes, it was Grants. And like I said, I was doing layaways. People, they didn't have charge cards at that time. People would buy something and keep coming in and paying for it. It was put in a box, put in the back of the store. And once they paid it all up, you could get the stuff out of the box and they could have it.
So how much do they pay you on that job?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe $1.25 an hour. That's what I seem to remember.
That's pretty good pay back then if you're making $1.25 an hour. So then from there you went to where?
Then I worked in the summer at a factory that made shoes. Marlboro is known for its shoe factories, and that was one of the places where I worked. No air conditioning.
You worked in a real sweatshop.
Yeah, a real sweatshop. You're right. I did sweat.
Was this the Fry Boot Company or was this a different company?
Yes, it was Fry Boot Company.
Fry was a huge name in boots in the 70s and 80s.
Yes, it was.
And before that, too, it was in this town where I grew up since the 1870s, I want to say, or 1880s, somewhere in that time period. So how did you like working in the factory?
I was okay. I was marking the boots where they were going to be sewn together by the stitchers. And there was a machine that came down and marked it with white spots where the shoes should be put together and sewed.
How big was this factory?
I don't know. There were several floors in it. Each floor had different things that they did. All the prints were done on the floor where I was. And then the people who sewed it was the floor below. They would all be sent down there to the floor below.
Were certain departments more all women and certain departments all men that worked there? I'm picturing things were different then.
They were different. The boss was a man, and it was the women that were working, making the shoes. But there was a man in each department that was the head of the department. Things have changed now, for the better.
I'm agreeing with you, Mom. I'm feeling for your times back then. But there were certainly some magical times that we talked about, too, then. And from there, you eventually ended up at a company called Raytheon where you met my dad. Is that where you met him?
Yes, I did meet him at Raytheon. He had already been working there for a year, and I started there. And, well, we went out on a date.
Now, you started there. Were you his secretary?
Yeah.
So you're his secretary. Okay, this is getting juicy. This is a soap opera here happening, right?
Not really. He asked me out for a date, and I said yes. And we went out and was still married after 54 years.
That's amazing. And when you were there working, now you had to keep your relationship secret or you were engaged, right? Somewhere along the line, you weren't allowed to tell people you were going to get married.
Yes, well, we were dating. It had to be kept secret. And then about 6 months later, Dad asked me to marry him. He gave me a ring, and I went to work, and everybody was so excited. You're engaged. You're engaged. Who are you engaged to? And then one night when I was going home from work, I got a ride home with Dad. That's, of course, before we were married, and everybody started to talk about me. You're going out with him, and yet you're engaged to someone else? And then I had to tell him, no, I'm engaged to him, but shh, be quiet.
Well, wearing the rock around wasn't keeping it too quiet.
No, I guess not.
So you got married, and about a year, 12 months after you were married, everything was legit here, I was born.
Yes, you were born. And like I said, you were a beautiful baby, and I was so happy. And one thing that I remember, when you were 6 months old, exactly, they landed on the moon. And I remember sitting there and saying to you, Kevin, can you believe this?
That would be July 20th, 1969. We have landed on the moon.
Yes, that's right. I'll always remember the date.
And a little later on, a couple other missions, my dad was, your husband, my dad was involved with a few of the things that were taken to the moon.
Yes, that's right. He was working on something that was going to test if there was water on the moon. Ended up there was no water on the moon, but he still had a lot to do with that test that they did.
So even that little piece is still on the moon that he made. You could see it on MTV. I used to get excited as a kid each time I saw it.
Yeah, that's right. It's still up there.
So what else do you remember about me as a kid? I'm getting a little bit older here. I'm 2-3 years old. I know there's some really cute pictures of me wearing diapers and headphones listening to music.
Yeah, you did. You used to call your record player your doc. I don't know why, what it meant, but you'd go in your room and carry it out and tell me you wanted to play docas. I said, what's docas? I don't, you come out with your records and put them on and you dance back and forth. You loved it.
And then I got a little older, and I was about 3.5, and then my little sister, Debbie Devil, was born.
Oh, yeah, that's what you nicknamed her. But I was really happy when she was born, too. Our family was perfect. One of each, a boy and a girl.
Yeah, and one cat.
Oh, yes, one cat.
You remember the cat's name?
Minsky.
Yes, exactly. Minsky the cat. And we had a squirrel.
Yeah, what do we call the squirrel? Sammy?
Yeah, Sammy the squirrel, exactly. So that was our whole family. Now, I remember what my first concert was. Do you remember the first concert you took me to? That we all went together as a family. Dionne?
Oh, Dionne Warwick?
Yeah, you took me to Dionne Warwick when I was about probably 9 years old.
Yes, now that you tell me, I do remember that.
And then it was about 5 years later, you're driving me and my friend Steve to see Ozzy Osbourne in concert. We're like 13, dropped me off at the big Centrum in Worcester. What were you thinking?
I didn't know who he was at first, and then I started to learn about him. And then I was a little frightened that my son was going to be going with his friend to see him, but it all worked out.
That was quite an experience seeing Ozzy Osbourne. I think it was 1983. So, but you did a wonderful job raising me, Mom. I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too, Kevin. You're the greatest.
It's been a lot of fun. Anything else you want to say? You want to sum up or your thoughts on life that you want to share?
No. Life is beautiful. Enjoy it, everyone.
Yep. Cherish those times, every moment of them. We're KC 101, and this has been a special edition with my mom on Saturday with Seniors, brought to you by FCCB, First Citizens Community Bank. They've been around for 150 years in the local branches in Wellsboro, Mansfield, and Blossburg, sponsoring today's show. Member FDIC.